The courtroom was unusually quiet that morning. Not normal quiet, heavy quiet. The kind of silence people make when they instinctively feel something important is about to happen. At the plaintiff's table sat an 80-year-old widow named Eleanor Whitmore, small frame, silver hair, hands trembling slightly as she held an old leather purse against her chest. She looked fragile, but her eyes told a completely different story. Those eyes looked tired, not from age, from memory. Across from her sat a younger man in his early 40s, Caleb Turner, well-dressed, clean haircut. Confident posture, but visibly irritated, because according to Caleb, this entire case should never have reached court. At the bench sat Judge Judy, and even she seemed unusually curious after reading the case file. She adjusted her glasses slowly, then looked directly at Eleanor. "You're suing your former tenant for emotional distress and property theft?" Eleanor nodded quietly. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Judy turned toward Caleb. "And you claim she fabricated the entire story?" Caleb immediately answered. "Because she did." The courtroom shifted slightly. People leaned forward because something about the tension between these two felt strange, personal. Judge Judy folded her hands. "All right." She looked toward Eleanor carefully. "Tell me what happened." And the moment Eleanor began speaking, atmosphere inside the courtroom changed completely. "My husband died 12 years ago." Silence. No dramatic music, no reaction. Just silence. Because the way she said it made the courtroom understand something immediately. She had never truly recovered. Eleanor explained that after her husband Richard passed away, the large family home became painfully empty. Too quiet, too lonely, too full of memories. For years she lived alone inside that house. Until eventually, financial pressure forced her to rent the upstairs guest room. That was when Caleb entered her life. According to Eleanor, Caleb seemed respectful, at first helpful, polite. He carried groceries, fixed broken cabinets, even helped her shovel snow during winter. Judge Judy nodded slowly. "So what changed?" Eleanor hesitated, then quietly answered, "I trusted him." Now the courtroom became still, because everyone knew those 4 words usually mean trouble is coming. Eleanor explained that over time, Caleb slowly became deeply involved in her personal life. He helped organize bills, held online payments, drove her to appointments, and eventually began helping manage certain financial paperwork. Judge Judy immediately looked up. "What kind of paperwork?" Eleanor swallowed hard. "Bank accounts." Now the courtroom changed instantly. Caleb rolled his eyes dramatically. "Oh, please." Judge Judy snapped toward him. "You'll speak when it's your turn." Eleanor continued. According to her, Caleb convinced her he was protecting her from scams and financial mistakes. At first, everything seemed normal, but then strange things began happening. Small withdrawals, missing jewelry, checks she didn't remember signing. At first, Eleanor blamed herself. Old age forgetfulness, confusion. And that part hit the audience hard, because deep down, many elderly people fear the exact same thing, not knowing whether they can still trust their own memory. Judge Judy's expression softened slightly. Then Eleanor revealed something nobody expected. One night, she overheard Caleb on the phone, mucking her, calling her an easy paycheck. The courtroom reacted immediately. Caleb shook his head. That never happened. But Eleanor ignored him. She explained she stayed awake the entire night after hearing those words, crying quietly inside her bedroom. Because suddenly, she realized the person she trusted most inside that empty house might have been using her all along. Judge Judy leaned forward carefully. "So what did you do?" Eleanor looked down at her hands, and for the first time, her voice began trembling. "I investigated him." Now, even Judge Judy looked surprised. Apparently, Eleanor secretly began documenting everything. Bank statements, receipts, pawn recordings, copies of checks, and according to her, evidence slowly revealed something horrifying. Over nearly 2 years, thousands of dollars disappeared from her accounts. Judge Judy turned sharply toward Caleb. "Did you take her money?" Caleb laughed nervously. "No." Eleanor immediately opened her purse and removed a thick stack of papers. The bailiff carried them toward the judge. The courtroom became silent while Judge Judy reviewed the documents. Then her face changed because several checks clearly showed Eleanor's signature. The handwriting looked inconsistent. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. "Did you sign these?" Eleanor answered quietly, "No." Caleb immediately interrupted. "She gave me permission." Judge Judy pointed sharply. "Quiet." Now the tension inside the courtroom became unbearable because this was no longer a simple landlord dispute. This was potential elder financial abuse, and everyone inside that courtroom knew it. Then came the first major twist. Caleb's attorney stood up calmly and introduced an argument nobody expected. According to the defense, Eleanor's memory had significantly declined over recent years. The implication hit instantly. They were suggesting she couldn't reliably remember what actually happened. The audience reacted softly because suddenly, the entire case became terrifying. Not only financially, emotionally. Judge Judy looked directly toward Eleanor. "Have you been diagnosed with memory problems?" Long silence. Then Eleanor answered, "Yes." The courtroom shifted immediately. Even Caleb looked slightly relieved hearing that. But then Eleanor added something unexpected, which is exactly why I started recording everything. Boom, the courtroom became completely silent because suddenly her preparation made perfect sense. She knew nobody would automatically believe her, so she prepared carefully, quietly, for months. Then came the evidence nobody expected: audio recordings. The bailiff connected a small recorder inside the courtroom. And moments later, Caleb's voice filled the room, mocking Eleanor, saying, "She doesn't even remember half the things she signs." The courtroom froze. Caleb's face lost color instantly. Judge Judy stared at him coldly. Then another recording played. This time, Caleb sounded annoyed. "If she dies before noticing, none of this matters anyway." Absolute silence. One woman in the audience covered her mouth. Judge Judy slowly removed her glasses, and for the first time all day, she looked genuinely angry. Caleb panicked immediately. "That's out of context." Judge Judy looked disgusted. "What context makes that acceptable?" No answer. Then Eleanor quietly revealed the real reason she came to court, and suddenly the entire case transformed into something heartbreaking. It wasn't actually about the money. Not really. It was about loneliness. Eleanor explained that after Richard died, silence inside the house became unbearable. She missed conversation, laughter, footsteps, human presence. And when Caleb arrived, she mistook attention for kindness. That line hit the courtroom like a punch because deep down, everyone understood exactly what she meant. Loneliness changes people, especially elderly people. It lowers defenses, makes trust dangerous. Judge Judy stayed unusually quiet now, listening carefully. Then Eleanor revealed another devastating detail. Apparently, Caleb sometimes called her grandma. The courtroom visibly reacted because that single detail made everything feel more manipulative, more personal, more cruel. Then came the second major twist. Caleb suddenly exploded emotionally. And what he revealed shocked everyone. According to him, he didn't originally plan to manipulate Eleanor. In fact, he claimed he genuinely cared about her in the beginning. But after losing his job and accumulating debt, he became desperate. And desperation slowly turned into greed. Judge Judy immediately responded, "So you stole from an old widow." Caleb lowered his head silently. No defense this time, no excuses, just shame. But the story still wasn't over, because Eleanor had one final confession. The confession that would eventually make Judge Judy leave the bench in silence. Eleanor slowly reached into her purse again and removed an old photograph, a black and white wedding picture. She stared at it for several seconds before speaking, then quietly said, "Caleb reminded me of my son." The courtroom froze. Apparently, Eleanor's son died decades earlier in a car accident at age 22, and according to her, Caleb looked painfully similar to him. Same smile, same voice, same mannerisms. That was why she trusted him so deeply. Not logic, not caution, grief, unresolved grief. Even Caleb looked stunned hearing that. Then Eleanor said something that completely shattered the courtroom. "I knew he was stealing months before I confronted him." Judge Judy blinked slowly. "You did?" Eleanor nodded, tears finally forming in her eyes. "I just didn't want to be alone again." Silence. Heavy silence. One audience member quietly wiped tears. Because suddenly, this wasn't a story about fraud anymore. It was about human emptiness, about how grief can leave emotional doors unlocked for years. Judge Judy looked downward quietly. Even she seemed emotionally affected now. Then Eleanor continued. "I let him stay because hearing footsteps upstairs made the house feel alive again. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The courtroom had completely transformed emotionally. Even Caleb looked broken now. Then came the final devastating moment. Eleanor turned toward Caleb directly and softly asked, 'Did you ever care about me at all?' Caleb tried answering immediately, but nothing came out. Because whatever complicated feelings existed earlier, they were buried beneath guilt now. Finally, he nodded slightly. Yes, Eleanor closed her eyes and whispered, 'That makes it worse.'" The courtroom fell into absolute silence. Even Judge Judy looked emotionally overwhelmed. Then Caleb unexpectedly stood up and admitted everything. The stolen money, the forged checks, the manipulation. All of it, his attorney looked horrified, but Caleb kept talking, because at that point, guilt had already crushed him. He explained how every small theft became easier after the first one, how shame slowly transformed into rationalization, and how eventually he stopped seeing Eleanor as a person, only opportunity. That honesty made the courtroom even more emotional somehow, because monsters are easy to hate. Broken people are harder. Then Judge Judy quietly reviewed the financial damages, nearly $47,000 missing. Jewelry never recovered, multiple forged signatures. But nobody inside that courtroom cared about the numbers anymore. Not really, because the emotional damage felt far larger. Then Judge Judy finally spoke, and her voice sounded different now, softer. "Healing loneliness with trust." She paused carefully. "Should never become a weapon." Nobody moved. Then Judge Judy ruled fully in Eleanor's favor. Maximum financial damages, immediate fraud investigation referral, and possible criminal prosecution. But even after delivering the verdict, courtroom remained strangely quiet because everybody understood something painful. Winning the case would not erase the betrayal. Then Eleanor slowly stood up, preparing to leave. But before walking away, she turned toward Caleb one final time and delivered the line nobody inside that courtroom would ever forget. "I would have helped you, willingly." Silence. "If you had simply asked." Caleb broke completely, head lowered, crying silently, and at that exact moment, Judge Judy quietly stood from the bench, said nothing, and walked into her chambers in silence. No final lecture, no dramatic exit, just silence. Because sometimes pain speaks louder than judgment ever can. And long after the courtroom emptied that day, people still remembered the same heartbreaking truth. The money wasn't what broke the old widow. It was discovering that kindness had become something dangerous to trust.